No one in the world knows what a mascot horror game is. Is this a mascot horror game? How about this? What about this one?
Oh hey, I got a couple of those.
See, for as saturated and how beloved mascot horror is, people don't really have a consensus on what it actually means. Some people think it's when you have a cast of recognizable figures. Others, when you have a franchise so big that you can just put one of your character's renders on a shirt and then sell it for too much money. Which, to be fair, it kind of does make sense because we as a community haven't really gotten anything to define the standard. With a Souls-like, you have... well, I couldn't even begin to fucking tell you. For a Metroidvania, you have Metroid and Castlevania stitched together weirdly. It's there, you kind of get the gist. Now, I love mascot horror. The amount of times I refresh scottgames.com can attest to that. But mascot horror is in this weird little niche where it can't decide what it wants to be. People all over the internet will claim something as a mascot horror without actually giving an explanation as to why. Just seeing a main character and slapping on the title on a whim. Now, mascot horror doesn't have to do anything with gameplay, purely stylization, story, and appearance. But I think it's very important to define those things that make mascot horror, because otherwise people are going to be labeling anything that's not realistic and bloody as mascot horror. I think a good game to examine first is a game which people think is a mascot horror when it really isn't. That game being Choo Choo Charles. The beloved game of getting headshots and getting weapons for your sick-ass train for hunting Australian escapees. It's honestly just a fun and silly little goofy game. But one thing it isn't is a mascot horror game. A lot of people consider Choo Choo Charles to be a mascot horror game because of one of two things. Number one, Choo Choo Charles is the name of the game. He is a titular villain. Number two, the game doesn't take itself seriously at all.
I need my pickles!
And it's not gritty and realistic like you're playing something like Amnesia. Because of these two things, people have this thought in their head that it's now mascot horror, which just isn't the case at all. If you search up a mascot horror game, what do you think comes up? A lot of you should know it. It's Garten of Banban. Five Nights at Freddy's. But wait a second, that's odd. Why isn't something like Slender Man considered the first mascot horror game? He's a titular villain, and I don't think the game takes itself that seriously. I mean, after all, you are collecting his pronouns, and it is a creepypasta. So if that's the case, why isn't Slender Man considered a mascot horror game? Why was Five Nights at Freddy's considered to be the first mascot horror game? It literally falls in the same jurisdiction as Choo Choo Charles, so what's going on? I think now's a good point in the video to actually tell you what a mascot horror game is. That way we can get a good baseline going forward. Keep in mind, this is my opinion, in no way can I define an entire genre. This is just me giving my own 2 cents on what I believe the criteria is of a mascot horror game. See, to make a game in the genre, it's pretty simple. In the universe where the story is taking place, there has to be a company, a group, an organization, furry hackers, whatever you may call it, and that organization has a mascot. And that mascot is really important to the story, or is the main threat you face against. So yes, Five Nights at Freddy's is considered a mascot horror. You have Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, the company, and Freddy Fazbear and his Fazgoons, the mascots. Now, Choo Choo Charles is not a mascot horror. Yes, there is a company called Charles Mining Company. Yes, Charles is wearing a shell, literally named Charles. However, Train Charles was never the mascot of it. You'll never find promotional materials, posters, or anything of the sort relating the mining company to Charles, because Charles Warren and Train Charles are different characters. So Choo Choo Charles is the mascot of nothing, making it not a mascot horror. And that's very important to call out specifically. Your game can have a main mascot, Slender Man being a good example, and it not fall under mascot horror. Typically the mascot has to have some other purpose rather than just killing people or general horror shenanigans. Whatever that be for entertainment like Finding Frankie or Poppy Playtime from Poppy Playtime. Now there is one game which I'm kind of on the fence about, and I genuinely don't know how to classify it. That game being Baldis Basics. Now this game is really weird to me. See, in Baldis Basics you run around a school and do basic math problems like 2 plus 2, 5 times 5, and I mean, it's a bizarre game. Its nature and bald head is one thing, but it's also unknown whether or not to classify this as a mascot horror or as its own separate thing, because Baldi as a character for all intents and purposes isn't the mascot of anything. He's a math teacher in a school, so fundamentally he is not some person you'd ever see a plushie be made out of in universe. But the weird thing is, in the beginning of the game, it's called Baldis Basics in Education and Learning, and Baldi says, "That's me!" Now, I'm unsure whether or not the game we're playing is a game in the story as well, because if Baldi is self-aware that he's in the game and he puts himself as a mascot in that game, then I guess he'd be considered a mascot horror? But at that point, I think it's just a meta-narrative, so I'm not really sure where to classify the game. You know, I'm now realizing it's 2 o'clock in the morning and I'm kind of recording a script about a fucking children's game. Where the fuck did I go wrong in life? The content in the game itself doesn't really view Baldi as some sort of promotional figure for the school, which ends up with him being in this sort of limbo state. I'm personally going to go off and say I don't think it's a mascot horror game because we haven't seen enough evidence of Baldi being a mascot to justify the title. Now's the one you've been waiting for. The one in the title, the one that makes no sense to me, the one that comes from one of the shittiest games I've ever played, Hello Neighbor. Now, I'm unsure as to why people even consider this in the realm of mascot horror to begin with. A lot of my friends call this a mascot horror game, and will probably be referred to as a mascot horror game to the end of time, because people think that it just is, but in reality it's nowhere near. The game is all about you as an individual trying to figure out what your neighbor is up to in his basement, which is not even close to being the concerning thing, because his house is looking like it's violating so many HOA violations. But that doesn't make him a mascot. I think the things that are attributed to people thinking it's a mascot horror is one of two things. One, he's a mascot of the game, and two, the art style is really cartoony and stylized. And let's be honest, it's a bad habit people have been forming, because what makes Hello Neighbor different from a game like Buckshot Roulette? Besides the fact that one is good and one's the worst thing you'll ever play. Unless the neighbor is like the mascot behind the Shark Pool Company, or Train Construction and Houses Incorporated. Which, by the way, that kid pisses me off. Has he not learned the lesson, don't talk to strangers, and especially don't go in their house and start breaking and stealing shit? I don't see how he could ever be a mascot horror character, and no amount of begging to MatPat on Twitter is going to change that in my eyes. Now, I have talked about what games are not mascot horror, so I feel as if it's only right to talk about games that are mascot horror, and how you do it right. Tattletale, by far one of my favorite mascot horror games, and objectively one of the best mascot horror games. You better not think otherwise. There is no need to understand confusing lore in order to enjoy it and understand what's happening at a base level. It keeps a generic horror aspect without over-explaining things, but explaining enough for you to get the general gist of what's going on. See, in Tattletale, you play as a kid a week before Christmas, and you want to do a little sinning and open your gifts early. Oh my god, is that a PS5? What the fuck? You open your gifts only to be met with a little purple Furby. That's just such a needy bitch. The gameplay consists of doing tasks while also maintaining the creature. It's pretty fun and makes for some pretty scary moments because if you don't take care of Tattletale and his amigos, they'll cry and whine, which in turn will make you cry and whine. The game doesn't run on for unnecessary sequels, nor does it pad out for the sake of playtime. It is a staple mascot horror game. Mwah! You get a good play point. What was I talking about? Oh yeah. See, to have a good mascot horror game, you need to understand a couple of things. When it comes to horror, there's one thing you need above all others, and that is a subversion of expectations. See, I genuinely think mascot horror has the potential to be the scariest genre of horror out there. The main reason being is that we can have mascots which we associate with something else be completely demented and twisted into nightmares beyond our comprehension. Honestly, the excitement of having a potential mascot horror game like that is overwhelming, and we almost had that with Poppy Playtime. Oh no. Whenever I think about Poppy Playtime, I just get sad because the game has so much potential, and it just threw it all away. By far, one of my favorite chapters of Poppy to this day is still Chapter 1. Sure, it is short, however, it does subversion of expectations so well. Going to the lobby, opening up this little side door, then coming back and seeing the statue that was in the middle of the room just being gone. And it could be roaming anywhere. And the rest of the chapter is amazing too. The chase sequence against Huggy is so iconic, it's the only reason the game even blew up. But then again, in classic mascot horror fashion, they feel the need to add so much lore, fishing for that game theory video, that they don't even try to make a horror game. When you boot up Poppy Playtime, you better be ready to sit through 20 minutes of dialogue without being able to skip it. Lore in games is fine. Most games have a story they're trying to tell in some capacity. If anything, a good story will greatly enhance your game. However, it is an issue when your horror game is more of a story game. It's just no longer scary. It is an issue that Poppy Playtime, and especially Five Nights at Freddy's, struggles with, which I'm not even going to talk about, because if I were to talk about it, I would stretch this video out by another 30 minutes, and there have been too many videos talking about the series and its horror. And finally, the last game I'll cover for this video, Indigo Park. Gonna be honest, it's fucking awful. It's bad. I can't even sugarcoat it. Like, I had a whole scripted thing of me trying to justify it. I literally threw it away. I think it's a bad game. I love Rambly the raccoon. He has a very punchable face, and that's a compliment from where I'm from. Now, I won't shun the game too much because it's only in its first chapter, and looking at the second chapter, it looks like there's actual gameplay, and it's looking like it's going to be pretty good. So I'm not gonna down it just yet. However, if I'm forced to pay out of pocket for the game, and it's bad, then I'll be angry. And you won't like me when I'm angry. Anyway, that'll be it for me. Tell me in the comments what you think Mascot Horror is, and let me know what I should do next. I'll see you later, alligator. I should write that one down.